Hello everyone and welcome to my new video. And what is this video about? Well, I had a little bit of a hard time trying to come up with a title for this video because what I'm going to do is a little bit sort of strange. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a slicing preset. I'm going to show you how to sort of get a little bit deep with creating slicing presets. And rather than just sort of slice something up into just bits that we will just play back, we're actually going to create ways in which we can have a little bit more control over how those slices are played back. This is going to be a kind of hybrid between traditional sample slicing and granular synthesis. I want to slice a sample up, but I want to play each slice back like millions and millions of other slices. I'm sure we all know how granular synthesis works now. It's this idea of playing audio back as these clusters of single samples to create these textures. And I'm sure we all know how sample slicing works. You take a loop and you slice it up into measures of varying length, and then you can sort of reprogram the slices to repurpose the loop. I'm going to try and go somewhere in between by creating a slicing preset that would allow me to slice something up, but then have kind of some granular control over each slice. It's pretty weird. It's pretty deep. Why am I doing it? I don't know. I could just use a granular synthesizer, but I thought that there was something interesting about being able to maintain the rhythmic integrity of the loop that we've sliced, whilst being able to turn all of those slices into this mad mush of clusteral, textural. I'm going to do this in Live 12, and you don't necessarily need Live 12 to do this. However, I will be doing some things that you will only be able to do in Live 12. However, that won't alienate people who don't have Live 12. If you have Live 11, Live 10, Live 9, maybe Live 8. Does anyone even use Live 8 anymore? Like, you should be able to do this too, but there's a couple of things you won't be able to do, but they're just little extra things I've bolted on just to make it more interesting. So let's get started. We're going to use a drum rack. We're going to create a slicing preset that slices to a drum rack, and I'm going to use sampler. So you will need sampler. So let's get an instance of sampler, and let's put sampler into cell number 1. Now, in order to create a slicing preset using either simpler or sampler, when you use a drum rack, you kind of have to put a sample in there. So I'm just going to go and just grab any old thing here. Let's just grab like some hi-hat thing here. Yeah, let's just put that in there. It doesn't really matter. The sample doesn't get loaded or indeed referenced with the file that you save, but you need it in there just to do it. So, okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn sustain mode on here to forwards, and we're going to turn on link. And basically what that means is that the start and end position will be linked, I think. Oh no, the start position is linked to the loop start. This is very good. And also this makes a difference to how the release is going to work on the various envelopes that we're going to use. So I've got my push turned on. So when I press and hold that cell there, that's just going to loop. Okay, good. So let's close that. I don't need the help. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the modulation tab. We're going to turn on the AUX envelope. And I'm going to pull all of this stuff down and turn up the sustain. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to macro the peak. And I don't think we even need the peak. Let's just try the sustain first. So we're going to map the sustain to macro 1. And I'm going to call this macro loop size, could call it grain size, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Let's close the browser down. So now, when I turn this down, no, that hasn't worked. That's because I haven't linked it to anything. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to link the AUX envelope to the loop length of the sample. Turn this up to 100. Right, so now I can turn that dial up and down, and it's going to change the loop length of the sample, which you can't see when you're doing it. So it's a bit, you can kind of see it there with the playhead, but this is not a million miles away from the built-in slicing preset in Ableton that allows you to sort of squeeze down the loop length of the slices. I'm sort of going in that direction, but making it a little bit more deep. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to try and find a way to actually scroll through the sound whilst it's looping like that. So I'm going to pull the loop size all the way down here. And I'm going to go to the modulation tab again. I'm going to go to LFO2, and I'm going to link LFO2 to the loop start. I'm going to turn this all the way up. And I'm going to keep re-trigger on and turn this frequency down. And then what's going to happen is that should scroll through the sound. Yeah, it's doing it when it gets to the start. Okay, it's coming back. It'll come back in a minute. There we go. There it goes. Okay. Let's put the volume up to 0 just whilst we're here. We're going to get to all this stuff later. So, yeah, okay, that's good. So I'm going to link this frequency to macro 2, and I'm going to call this scan speed or something, because it's kind of scanning through the sample. And then for the third macro, I'm going to link the LFO type to the third macro, and I'm going to call this scan wave, something like that. So now I can kind of choose between all the different LFOs. It's kind of actually inverted. Maybe I could go into the where's the thing? Here we go. Yeah, so I maybe might actually, no, I can't invert those. Okay, that's fine. So basically it's sort of a bit weird, but when you're all the way down, you're actually selecting the last one in the list, which is slightly weird. Anyway, so we can say, if we put it to something like this one, 28, then that is going to play or scan forwards through the sample at the scan speed. Now, we could actually sort of back off the loop and endpoint and apply a crossfade, and I tried that, and unfortunately that doesn't really work with the ADSRs, I've noticed, which is why I've had to turn link on. Actually, I can't remember why it didn't work. It doesn't matter. We're just going to have to live with it. So, okay, let's think now about the amplitude envelope. So I want to have an amplitude envelope for each slice. This is going to be for each slice, not each grain. But that's okay. So let's map the attack to macro 4, rename this and just call this attack. And then let's map the release to macro 5, and we'll just call that release. So now when I sort of turn the attack up, it's going to fade in. And then when I have the release up high and I let go of the MIDI button or MIDI key or whatever. Okay, so there we've got something happening. What's happening there? So when I actually let go, something weird is happening. What could that be? Is it because I've got link on? No. I think we might need to turn up the release on this envelope as well. Let's turn the release up. I wonder if we should link that to the same envelope. Let's try that. Let's link that to the same macro. Sorry, I should say. Right, okay. Hear what happens there. It kind of goes up a little bit. Okay, that's a little weird. I wonder if I unmap that. Oh my God, what have I just done? Unmap from attack. Maybe the end. Maybe we need to map the end to the loop size as well. Let's do that. Let's map the end to the loop size. Okay, I'm just gonna maybe map the release again to the release. I think all the envelopes should have the same settings. Okay, that's all pretty good. Nice. Okay, now I want to have a little bit of control over the pitch. Now, I could map the transposition to a macro, but the problem is that's going to go kind of incrementally in semitones. So this is when I'm going to bring in something that only Live 12 can do. I'm going to bring in the CC control. And what's kind of interesting that I've worked out is that when you do these slice presets and drum racks, sometimes you can put MIDI effects before the sampler, which does open up even more possibilities. There's a huge amount of stuff to cover here. But yeah, so this is a thing that you can only get in Live 12, I believe, and it just gives you sort of dial control over MIDI CC messages. So I'm going to use the pitch bend and the mod wheel, and not the mod wheel, the pitch bend and the pressure to control some other things so I can have macro control over them. So for that, I'm going to go to the MIDI tab. I'm going to put the pitch bend range all the way up to plus and minus 24 semitones. So now, when I turn this, we can go up and down like that. So I'm going to map that to macro 6, and pitch bend is fine. And remember, this is going to be available to every single slice that happens when we use the slicing preset. This is interesting stuff. And now maybe I think I would like some control over how much of the modulation I want to happen. Now, this dial here, this number box, is where you would choose how much of the modulation is applied to the destination. But we don't have any MIDI control over that. But we do actually, what I should say is that it can't be macroed or it can't be mapped. But it can be controlled via MIDI, and we can do that in the MIDI tab. So I'm going to use the pressure, and I'm going to say, let's route the pressure to the LFO2 amount A, turn this all the way up, and then now, so something weird's going on with my envelope. That's interesting. That's a sustain thing. Sustain's up there. Okay, I'm not going to worry about that right now. But anyway, so I've mapped the pressure to this thing here, which I can control from here. So with this all the way down, oh, it's still scanning. That's interesting. So maybe we need to, let's try 50 here and 50 here. Yeah, it's still scanning, just very, very, very slowly. First, I turn this up. No, this isn't working. Let's put this back to 100 and put this back to 100. Let's turn the speed up and turn the pressure down. There we go. So now it's not scanning, but if I turn the pressure up, it's going to scan fully at the speed that I've set by the scan speed. And we can kind of come to a dead stop, and then we could almost use this as like an offset maybe. There we go. Now we can offset around. So let's map that to macro 7. And rather than call it pressure, let's call it scan AMT /offset. It doesn't all fit. All right, let's try scan AMT offset. Offs. Okay, it's a very cryptic parameter name. Yeah, that'll do. All right, okay. Okay, so what have we got then? Okay, we've still got a huge amount of macros left because we can have up to 16 macros. So maybe we could use another LFO to just do something to the pitch. So let's use LFO3 and let's route LFO3 to the pitch. Where is the pitch? Right, okay. And let's turn retrigger off. Turn this up. There we go. Now we can have like an LFO on the pitch. Something weird's going on with my envelope. It's fine. I'm not going to worry about it. So, all right, that's all good. So again, we could maybe have the, this is all getting a little bit, let's shrink this down a bit. Let's map the rate of the LFO3 to macro 8, and let's call this PTLFO freak. Get very creative with your parameter names. And then let's have the wave type to macro 9, and we'll call that PLFO wave. So we can get scribbly pitch modulation. And then again, we kind of want to choose how much of this we can map. So we could try the, yeah, maybe we could try the mod wheel this time because we've got this thing. So let's map the mod wheel to the amount of LFO3A and set this to 100. Brilliant. So we can map that to macro 10 and we'll call macro 10 PLFO AMT. You can name these whatever you want, make them a little bit better for your brain to remember. All right, I think that's kind of, wow, let's do some filtering as well. Let's turn down the key and let's map the filter frequency to macro 11, the resonance to macro 12, the type to macro 13. That's all good, I think. Yeah, that's cool. With the morph on. If you go to morph, then we kind of need that mapped as well. All right, let's map the morph to this one. Because when you turn that, it's only when morph is on. That's fine. So when that's all the way up, you can use that dial. I love that morphing filter. That's very good. All right, we've got 2 macros left. Let's use them. We can maybe use these for some like effects now. So I'm going to open the chain tab and open not the IO. Actually, the IO is quite important because I want to talk about the choke groups. And remind me, YouTube, you can't. You're watching. It's a video. So I'm going to open the return chain, and I'm going to create a return chain. I'm going to rename it mix bus, and I'm going to route the output to the mix bus. And now when we use this slicing preset later, every single slice will get routed to this mix bus, which is very nice. So that means that we can put like some effects on there. So why don't we put like just a reverb on there just to sort of smear everything, just to sort of be experimental. We could just, we could maybe map the dry wet to macro 15 and the size to macro 16. Let's see what we've got. Yeah, dry wet. Let's rename that to reverb. That's just going to add a little bit of smearing. And then whilst we're there, why don't we be safe and stick a limiter on that as well. Okay, so now the choke groups. Now we've got a decision to make here, because if we choose not to choke the slices, then I believe that they won't get choked out. So each of their own envelopes will be allowed to release if a new MIDI note is triggered. Whereas if we choke them, then that won't happen. And that could be interesting. So maybe what I might do is make 2 versions of this, one where it's choked and one where it isn't. So I'm just going to collapse everything down here, bring this all down and just have this. Right. Okay. So I'm going to rename this grain slicer. Okay. And then I'm going to go to my user library, going to go to defaults, and I'm going to go to slicing. And I'm going to drop that in there like that. Hit enter. And now that preset has been saved. And now I'm going to go back in here. And I'm going to set this to choke 1. And I'm going to rename, let's close that all down, I'm going to rename this to grain slicer choked. And put that in there. Let's just see how that works. Okay, so there we go. We've created our wacky sort of granular sample slicer. I should have really set some defaults, but that's okay because we're going to get experimental with the snapshots or whatever. So let's see if it's worked. Let's get a sample in. I'm going to go to my samples. I'm going to go to my breaks. I'm going to go and get my Amen break in here, and let's just check that that's coming through okay. Now, it really doesn't matter whether you choose to slice this via beats, regions, or transients, or whatever. I'm just going to do it by transients. So let's right click. Let's go to slice to new MIDI track. Let's go transient, whatever. And let's go to grain slicer. Let's check if this has worked. Click OK. Right. So now what it's done is that what it would normally do is that it creates a MIDI clip of those slices. But we should have all our parameters. Right. Let's see if this has worked. Let's see what we've got. Oh, my goodness me. What's this? right, it worked. There's a slight problem with the volume, which we could maybe still address. We've got the original saved there, but otherwise it works. So what's happened? Well, basically it's sliced everything up into bits, but we've got like really kind of weird controls over how each slice is played back. So I can kind of play all the slices back from my push. Or indeed, like I could do it here from the clip. We go in the clip here and I turn this on, we can... but like we've kind of got all this interesting control. So we can change the loop size, how fast it scans through that single slice, the wave shape, the attack and release for that slice, although this will be global to all of them. Yeah, there's something I didn't get quite right with the sustain there, because when you take your finger off, it's slightly different. Pitch bend. What's this? A scan amount. Oh yeah, that's the offset. There's a huge amount of stuff to play with here. The pitch LFO. So what's kind of... Oh, whoops. So what's kind of, interesting, as I said earlier, is that like we've kind of got all these granular textures, but they're still kind of playing back in the rhythmic fashion that's provided by the MIDI when you slice something like this, which I think is interesting. You can hear how sort of like it's kind of got that sort of tonal characteristic of granular synthesis, but the rhythm of the loop is there. I wonder what would happen if we sort of made them all shorter, like this. Okay, let's turn the release up. Now you got to remember that when we applied the modulation to the start position, retrigger was on. So that means that is going to restart the LFO. You could turn that off if you want. We could have maybe had an option to make that available, but we didn't anyway. So, there's loads of things that you can experiment with. Try this yourself. And of course, as ever, what's interesting about all of this stuff is that you can randomize and sometimes get nothing, which is always nice. Wow. Yeah. Turn that attack time down. I may have been not careful enough with the amplitude volume. Maybe I can't think what I could have done to have changed that really. Velocity was down. Maybe I should set the volume a little bit too high. Maybe it should have stayed at -12. Anyway, I've done it now. Could go back and change it if I want, but you can do that yourself. Yeah. Oh my goodness me. one thing that I've also learnt whilst trying to work out how to do this is that you can right-click parameters and you can choose to exclude macro from randomization or from variations. Maybe you knew that already. I didn't. I don't really do this stuff very often. I thought this would just be interesting to do. So let's try it with like a sample that's not a breakbeat. Let's go to my vocals and just pick one of these. Oh yeah. Yeah, let's do it with this one. So let's go slice to new MIDI track, and then let's just do this by let's just do it in 16th notes, and let's choose the grain slicer. Oh, we must check out the choked version as well. Let's choose grain slicer, choose OK. See if it's going to do it. It's done it. All right, let's see what this sounds like. My God, it's incredibly loud. Yeah, so with stuff like vocals, maybe that crossfade needs to go in there. I couldn't work out a way to do this. Maybe I will revisit this and try and develop it a little bit more and maybe do a part 2 or something. So this is kind of just like a little sort of idea, really. Okay. So it's sort of somewhere between slicing samples and granular synthesis, which is kind of funny because they're both the same thing, only one works on a larger level and one works on a very small micro level. So slicing is doing it on a macro level, granular is doing it on a micro level, and we're doing it on the meso level? I don't know. Remind me to Google those words, check I've used them right. Otherwise I might look like a bit of a fool! All right, let's see how this sounds now with the choked version. So let's stop that clip. Let's go to this aim and break here, go slice the new MIDI track. We're going to slice via transients, and let's go for the choked version and see how this sounds in comparison. Okay, it's done it. Let's have a listen. It's probably going to be really loud. Sorry about that. Yeah. So with this one, a single, they're going to get choked out by each other, which is interesting. If we play this like really slow, let's play this at like 80 BPM. Well, it's madness, really, isn't it? I think it needs some work, but the idea is sound. And I did actually plan this video to be way longer, and I was going to do loads and loads of different like versions of this idea, like some with effects. And I've done a video on this type of thing before, but I thought this time I would go a little bit further and explore the macros. But I think this is something I could do again, using other things, like maybe using corpus or something. Each one is rooted to a different instance of corpus. There's one thing that I did try that didn't work, it did kind of work, but it was buggy, was using things like expression control before each instance of whatever sampler you're using in the slice, and then mapped to various things in that single slice chain. Ableton did not like that. I didn't give it a hard time though, because I thought maybe I am pushing it a little bit. This is kind of a weird hacky way into doing this stuff, but I've been doing this in Ableton since Live 6, I think. I remember writing to them and asking them, how do you make a a slicing preset. I want to make my own one, and they told me, oh, you just make it and drop it in the, you know, in the folder here. Okay, so there we go. Let's have a listen to the one that isn't choked. Wow. Oh my goodness me. Fun. So there you go. I hope you found that interesting. I certainly found that interesting. I've certainly had loads of fun trying to work on this idea for the last couple of days. That is how you can kind of make a bizarre granular sample slicer thing. You can get very deep with all of these macros. Could go even further and introduce effects on the on the return chain here. I'm going to get into that maybe in another video. This is very exciting stuff. Okay. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to go and put this on Patreon now, where if you'd like to support me there, you can get access to this set, plus hundreds, literally hundreds. I looked the other day, 900 posts I've made, giving you access to all kinds of Ableton live sets, Max for live devices, Max patches, things, community stuff in the community, or if you want to get private tuition with me with your Ableton stuff or whatever, or just life. Actually, I'm a terrible person for that advice. Then your support goes towards making more content like this. Right, I hope you enjoyed that. See you next time. Have a nice time. Bye. Good times.